Alright, welcome back. So this is a tutorial on a beginner's guide on what to do when you first start working in Max. Um, if you haven't watched the first tutorial about how to use the introduction basically to the toolbars we have up here, I really suggest you go watch that one because it'll really help you understanding what all these icons are. Anyway, so here we have a project that we are supposed to work on, and the client has requested for us to basically design some interior scenes for this company. So this is basically a real life scenario. So basically, we've been given a certain areas to work with, of which we know we are going to be working on um, the lounge area here, the CEO's meeting room, CEO's office over here, and some other areas. So usually the very first thing you need to do is that we need to work in Revit. That's what I chose to work in creating the detailed floor plan. Now, after creating the floor plan, all I had to do was basically to save it and now import um, the model directly into 3ds Max. So all I did is just click on File, go to Import, and I just go to what's the company name, the file name, just Bauxite Company. So while this is importing directly from Revit, it's going to bring in this pop-up, and then we just choose these are basically the layers we have it, but I'll just go for the 3D for now, and just include the materials. Click OK. Wait for it to load, and here we are. Okay, so this is how we modeled it in Revit, and this is what it looks like in the shading mode. So I know by default that this is the MD's office. Okay, so we're going to focus on this room for now. So usually what we first do is that I have made a list over here on what to do when you first get your work. So the very first thing that I usually have to do is to import your model, of which this is what we have done, importing a model. Then we have to apply our materials, create some cameras, import our assets such as the furniture, exterior, or the interior assets. We'll then have to create our light source. Then we need to work on adjusting our lights, material, and asset composition. Also, we need to play with the tone mapping, and then we render. And finally, after doing all of that, we do our post-process in Photoshop, Lightroom, or After Effects, or any photo editing software for that matter. Okay, so now we're going to start with the very first option, apply materials. We know by default, based on what they provided for us in the 3D, that's basically going to be this area here. We have like some gray walls, but I'm just going to make it white for now, and then you can just play with your composition on how your other colors of the walls and ceiling should be like. So also, as part of the very first option, we need to either model in Max or just import a model. And as you can see here, I don't have like the floor done. So for the context of going to be an interior scene, I'm going to first and foremost start by just creating a floor. So for this, I'm just creating a box to represent the floor. Just give it some height. And you can also do this by looking at it here. By default, this is going to be ground 0. So as much as possible, I have one to make sure that my floor is at origin 0, which is this color here. I'm just going to move it up this way, like this. And I'm going to repeat the same thing for the ceiling. Okay, make it an instance. And just going to make sure it's like this. Okay. Now I've modeled my ceiling and the floor. It doesn't really have to follow like the shape of this. This is going to be an interior scene. It wouldn't really show much. So that's what I have here for modeling. So the next thing I'll do is to apply some basic materials. So for the basic materials, we just like to go with all white for everything, just to start. Apply. And Now we can also work the same on our walls. One thing you can also do is that in case you want to apply to everything here, you just have to click on one of the objects and then you can right click and choose select similar. By default, as you can see, everything else has been selected, excluding the doors, the windows, and everything else. So to make this also helps in speeding up the workflow faster. So now I just have to just apply the material to one face and everything is got it. So now the next thing I'll do is to work on the windows. So I know this is the window. Just want to move it. Okay. So I can see that the glass of the window is basically attached to the frame. So to work around this, this is where I'll go to my modifiers tab, click on elements, and I'm going to select the frame itself and not the glass. So the frame, I want to give it, let's say, a black color. So I will just come down here and over here and choose black and apply. And I'm going to click on the glass itself, choose where we have glass and apply here as well. Now as you can see, we can see inside, but unfortunately this process we cannot repeat it the same way as we have over here for the other areas. We cannot really do select similar. So what I'll do here is that I'll just have to, you have to manually do this one by one. Like this. And we continue. Okay. So I will repeat this process later on for these other ones. This will take a bit more time. But once you do it, it's done once and for all, and then you're good to go. So we know this is a glass. Put glass here. Choose the frame. Click on it, and then we're good to go. Okay, so I'll work on it on the other ones as well. So what we can now also do here is that we're gonna have to like put things in our room. And first and foremost, let's just do some glass material for the door as well. So like similar, I'm just gonna make this door all white for now. I might not be using this particular door, but I'll just work on it. Or let's just make it nice wooden color. So for that, I'll like to use um, this type of material. This looks good. Right click, apply. Now if you watch my tutorial on material application, you realize that materials that usually have a texture attached to it, they need to come with a UV map. So whilst everything is still selected, I haven't deselected anything. I can go down to where we have UV mapping. I select it, and now I'm just going to use the box modifier, mapping parameter, and then click on real world map size. So now I have full control of what the door should look like in terms of the mapping. I'm going to use the X formation so that the material looks like it's going upward instead of Z. So that's the difference. And what we're going to do here is that in order for me to see things, what's going on, I can just right click this and choose, well, first I'm going to make it name it. So I'm going to name it MD Office Ceiling. Yeah. Now I'm going to hide this, hide selection, but the box is basically still there. So what we'll do here now is that we're going to move on to our next step, which is creating our cameras. So for now, if you're going to create a camera, I like to be in the top view of this section, and I like to create a new quad. So for the new quad, I'm just going to make it this way for now, and I am going to resize this a little bit. Now what I'm going to do here is that I know from the layout given, we know the MD's office is this way, so I would like to have one camera viewing this way and one viewing this way. So this is the cameras I'm going to create. So I'm going to click here, create camera, and apply it this way, and one should be applied this way. Okay, now to view and see what my cameras are looking like, I'm going to click here, either click this way, choose cameras, and choose the option here, or I can do shortcut to C, and I choose the camera 1. Now this is what camera 1 is seeing. Can choose C again, and this is what camera 2 is looking like. So what I'm going to do is I go back to camera 1, and I am going to adjust the focal viewpoint of the camera. Click on the modify tab again and play with the field of view so we can see a bit more. Now what I can also do here is that I can choose to see a bit more of this or a bit more this way. I'll prefer to see a bit more this way so we can see everything much more clearer. And camera 2 will have the same thing. Select the camera, play with field of view so we can see a bit more like this. And I'm going to zoom out, bring it back a bit. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So we've created the cameras. Cameras have been created. Now what we can do now is that we're going to have to, step 4, import our assets, furniture, and usually this stage is what usually takes the most time. So usually before you come here, I would suggest that you plan exactly every single thing you know you're going to be using in your scene. So for instance, I know that we're going to need some kind of like office table. So I'm just going to search through my asset library and look for office assets. I know also the client has given us a guide to follow. So they have told us that they want to have this type of furniture around. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to have to find some assets that look similar to what this is. You can go and find these online, or if you can just model them yourself. You get it? For me, this looks very easy to model, so it's something I think I will do. Yeah, this looks like something I think I'll do. So let's model this. Okay, so to model this, it looks like it's a box. So for this, I usually like to do this in a big quad. And I like to do this in this mode. So I'm just going to do a box. Just create it anyhow for now. Raise it up to a certain level. Now we know the box has another box inside of it. So a narrower one. This. So I'll make it look like this. Bring it up to a degree. Send it up as well. Bring this. This looks a bit too high. Bring it down a bit. And we know it has another box on top. So for that, we'll create another box for it. Something like this. We'll do this thickness should be fine. Just scale it. To come this way. You can also view it from the top end like this. And scale it a bit more. Yeah, this looks fine. Then we know it has another box on the left hand side. So it's going to create a very thin one. Very, very thin one. How far does it stretch? Let's see. Okay, just in the middle. So we're just going to create it this way. Something like this. Pull it up. Adjust it a little bit. And now, what we can do Here's the height. So like here, like this. Okay. I know I'm not getting the scaling exactly right, but this is basically what it looks like. We'll work on the scale later on. Okay, so now that this is done, we can now, hold on, bring this up a bit. This is wrong. This goes up like this. And this goes inside this way. And then the height is extended up like this. Okay, now I think we've got it. So now we can just materialize it. So we know it's black, some stone, and then wood, and more black down there. So let's have the black here and the black here. So open the materials library, choose a black. Like we know this was some kind of stone. So I'm just going to go for a stone-like material. I'm going to go with this. Apply it. It has, this stone material has a texture to it, so I'm going to apply a UV map. So a UVW map applies to it. We still can't see our texture. Choose the box mapping. Choose real world map size. This is fine. And we know this is a wood material. So for now, I'm just going to go with pine. Just to start off, I'm just going to go with pine. Yes. Okay. Let's play with this. Okay, so this way it looks like. So for this looks like it's coming in. Bring it out a bit, like here. Okay. Now we can group this. This takes a bit more time, but it's very, very accurate to what the client wants. So now we can scale it to fit the room. Oh, yeah. Reduce it like this, a bit more like that. Go in, come back a bit. Okay, this is it. Alright, cool. So let's continue importing the other assets. So we have something like this. Let's bring it in just because it has got some stuff we might need. So what I just did was I just clicked and dragged. When you click and drag, you can also do that, and you have your asset this way. Now after doing that, as you can see, I have not clicked elsewhere again, so I can move the model wherever and however I want it. So for now, I'm just going to move it here. So this is usually what I also like to do when I'm creating my assets. I like to drop everything in here first and foremost, see what works well. I'll bring this in just in case. We'll need it for the other areas as well. Click on this, rename material, drop it. Anything else for the office? Let's get some office chairs. I don't really need this for now. I don't need this. But we know we have in here a meeting room, so I can also search for let's let's say sofa. No, let's search for chairs. So I know for a fact that we have some chairs here and an L-shaped. Okay, let's go for dining. So we know we have a 4-seater here. We can't use that one. It looks too fancy. Let's go with this option. Bring it in. This looks too formal. This won't work. Okay, let's, for the sake of moving on, let's just look for a sofa. An L-shaped sofa. Not this one. Let's look for another one. This looks cool. But let me see what other options I have. Nope, this won't work. This won't work either. Let's try with this. This looks fine. Okay. And then we need some armchairs. So let's search for chair. See what options I have for chairs. Okay, so once you have all your stuff brought in, we can then click on relink our bitmaps. It's very important. So now all these maps are basically missing and we need to find them. So we're just going to click on the directory where I have everything located. You can see this progress bar moving. It's going to find everything we have in here. And we can see we're missing one, but that's a Corona bitmap. So while it's loading, you'd realize that now our material and textures are now loading. Okay, looks fine. And I'm going to bring a few more things in here, like some lights, ceiling lights. Have a look at this one. This looks cool for the sitting area. We can import the Corona version. Drop it here. Relink our bitmaps again because we just brought in something new. It gets found. And I'm going to switch from Arnold to Corona because we're working with Corona engine. And what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to work on this first. So group that first. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move this around. I clicked on A so I can snap to movements of 5s. Okay, now I will select everything and group them. Then I can move them around. So this brings us to the next section, which is the importing of assets and at the same time to creating our light source and basically composition. So I'm going to move everything around in the space that you're supposed to be at based on what we have in the layouts. Okay, so we know this goes somewhere here. We know this goes somewhere here. Gonna move this way, and we know we have some kind of a chair over here like this, and we know CEO's office is this way, and now I can pick the chair from here and bring it this way. So what I did, I just copied it by holding shift, and I can move it however I want. So we have it this way, like this. So we can see this looks a bit too short, so we're just gonna scale it a bit upward. This. Yeah, this looks cool. Okay, so now the next thing we can do here is that I'm just gonna move the lights into position. Let's bring one here, and we can send another one maybe here, and maybe send one this way, just for the meantime. So now I'm just going to simulate the render, start the render so we can see what we're working with. We need to also have a TV here. I'll add that later on, together with some plants and also some picture frames. So let me just bring in some plants. Choose the first option because I've worked with this before. It's good enough. Works well for me. Drop them. Wait for it to load. Okay, once our plants are in here, we can play with our railing bitmaps. And now I'm just going to choose some plants to go and decorate the space. So I'm going to move this one here, somewhere here. And I'm going to take this and bring it somewhere over here. Cool. Now, I'm going to move down to creating a light source, just artificial sun. So for that, I am going to create our sun this way. Just bring it all the way up. It's been created. And I'm going to click on this back to our modifiers tab. Click on add corona environment. By so doing, you can see our viewport has changed. I usually don't like it this way, so I'm just going to go back to viewport's background and click to gradient color. So now whilst my sun is still selected, I can reduce the intensity from 1% to 0.2, and the size I'm going to make it 20. Now that this is a 20, I'm going to move this way so I can get some nice shadows. Okay, so whilst I've done that, we have basically created a light. We can also create a light by using an HDRI. That also works. But for the meantime, I'm just going to use a sun and their artificial lights. So I'm just going to scatter around some corona lights. So I just click on the bulb icon, go down to disk, and I'm just going to click on F3 so I can go into wireframe very easily. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to duplicate this and make this an instance. And I'm going to click down here on the modifiers tab, go down to Kelvin temperature. I usually like to use temperature around like 5,000 or 5,500. Anything between 5,000 to 5,500 simulates a nice warm light experience. Now I am going to add an IES to it, and I'm going to choose focused uniform. So by default, if you can see, by enabling it off and on, we can see how this affects our light shape. So now I'm just going to move this around. So if you realize when we started, I created a box which was a ceiling, and I want to bring this back so we can see, so we can basically use it to adjust the height of the lights. So I'm just going to type here ceiling, MD, ceiling office, and click on view. So now as you can see, by clicking on view, we can see what's supposed to be here. Cool. So I click on this, and I now move it upwards this way. Yeah. Alright, this is cool. Alright, so now all I'm just gonna do is I'm just gonna scatter these lights around, move them around. So I'm just gonna leave one here. I'm gonna move one this way. I'm gonna click on this one, let them move down this way as well. And I'm gonna move one towards the MD side over here, like this, and maybe one over here. Now one thing I also want to do is this. I want to click on the same thing, and this time make it a copy. And for this one, what I'll do is I'll reduce the size to be a bit more smaller, like so. And I am going to reduce the temperature for this one to like 4,500. And for this type of light, I am going to move it around the edges of the wall. So what this is basically, and I'll make it an instance. So what this basically does is that by so doing, I am basically creating shadows for the walls, for the lights. So with this, you can basically, I'm supposed to basically do this in with an IR on. But for now, I'm just going to do this here because I just want to see what this will look like. And I can just move some a little bit also to the right, but very close to the wall, like I said. Okay. And what we're going to do here is that we've imported our assets. We've created a light source. We've adjusted the lights a bit. We're not yet to do material assets and asset composition. So to do this, we're now at this stage. So to do this is very simple. We're gonna have to go into our 3-quad like what we did here before, and this is where we now play with our cameras to see how everything is looking like. Like this, we can see this camera angle doesn't look too well. So what I can do is that I can move this a little bit this way and send this here like this, just to get a bit more viewing angle. And I can bring the camera down a bit or up a bit, depends on what works. You can see composition. Let me bring another plant, maybe somewhere here. So just gonna move it out this way, and I'm gonna choose a second camera. Well, first camera. Okay, so this camera is technically being blocked by the plant. Cool. So we're gonna have to move it around, move it a bit forward, and move it upward, so we can see. Okay, and what I'm gonna do here is that, what is this? Wait a second, as a plant leaf. I'm gonna create another camera angle to show you from this way. Click on this one, time it like this. And what I'm gonna do here is that I'm going to start an IR on the very first camera we created, so we get to see what we're looking at. So I choose this option, I lock the frame to this window, and I click Start Interactive. I close this, and now we can see what's wrong here. So we can see this, and I think the plants look like they are all V-Ray materials. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to select that. So I've selected them all. I right click, and I am going to click on Open Corona Converter. Then I go down to Materials of Selected Objects Only. I click Convert. So what's happening here is that it's converting all this V-Ray blend material unsupported. It's converting them all to Corona assets over here, yes. So as you can see, all the red lights have all gone. And so this is what this camera angle is looking like. So we're going to choose a second camera angle, this one. I'm going to choose a third one that we created, so we can basically see what our room is looking like for now. So what I'm going to do here is that we can see that I want these lights to show, so I'm just going to leave and maintain them here like this. And we're now working at the materials and asset composition. So for the asset composition and playing with the lights, I am basically going to play with these lights, the adjustments, and see what works well. And what I want is that these small lights, I don't want them to show, but I want to have them cast a shadow. So what I'm going to do here is that I am going to maximize this a little bit more so you guys can see. And I'm going to click on the lights here like this. So if you watch these ones, I am going to go down to the modifiers tab, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it the visibility off on all of them. By turning them off, we can see the light isn't showing anymore. However, when we move it, we can see that the light is still enabled, and we have this nice effect over here. So it looks like I have to do the same for all the lights I created because they're not too close to the walls. So we can see it, we have a nice glow over here, and I'm going to make one more here. And I'm going to send one more behind the door here. And I'm going to send some also this way towards the side of the wall, and move some here. I'm gonna move one here also. So I'll just adjust these ones by making them come forward a bit. They're too close to the wall. Yes. And I'm gonna use a different camera angle to see what's happening here too. This sleeve is being a problem, so I'm just gonna move the camera a bit more forward. Or another thing you can also do is this. You can take your camera back to where it was originally, and we have two options here. So the very first option, or which is the easy thing to do, is to activate something we call environment clipping. By clipping enabled, we can click on this showing viewports and start playing with the value from 0 to whatever value, a very high value. And what's going to happen is that it's going to clip everything in front of the camera like this. And if you look on the left hand side of the screen over here, we can see that this is being clipped out. This is the clipping plane. So with this, this one option, one way to do it. The second way to do it is by, I'm going to disable this for now, and I am going to choose something called here, object visibility. So by clicking on it, I will click on the plus sign, and I am going to click on the plant, and what's going to happen is that it's going to also like make it go away this way. So I don't really have a bit of this dining table in frame, so I'm just going to move it up a bit. Like so. And what I'm going to do here is that I am going to move on to the next stage, which is to play the tone mapping and render. So for that, I would firstly want to work with my shadows. You can see I don't have my shadows going on. So I'm just going to click on this, move my sun around to see what effects that would give. Basically, what's going on here is that I am trying to get some sun rays coming in. Yes, just like this. So we could see on one camera view, we couldn't really see much of the sun. And over here, what I want to adjust the lens a bit more, like this, a bit more wider. So by adjusting it, we can see our field of view here has changed. I'm gonna click on this and move it a little bit towards the left, like this. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna continue moving the sun. To find the right spot for it. Now, doing this interactive is dependent on your computer specs. So just bear that in mind. So I'm going to move on to the very last stage, which is the tone mapping. So for the tone mapping, what we're going to do here is that we're going to have to adjust our colors and everything. So currently it's looking a bit yellowish. I also noticed that I haven't applied a floor material. So for now, I'm just going to do that real quick. I'm just going to click on where our floor is, and I am going to give it a material. So we know it's an office, and it's most likely they're going to be using tiles. So I'm going to choose ceramic tiles and just find one that fits perfectly for it. So I'm just going to go with something like this, a dark tile, and apply to it. Oh, this looks a bit too dark, so let's go with a bit more brown and play with the colors with it as well. If this is not working, let's try something tavern. And we're going to apply a UV map just so we can see what our tiles look like. Box, map size on. Okay, I think this looks fine for now. And I'm going to continue with the mapping. So for the tone mapping, working on this is quite simple. We just have to click on this section, this tab here. And what we're going to do is we're going to play with things like our exposure. So we can increase it very high, and this, as you can see, adjust how much light is entering the camera, or we can bring it all the way down and it also affects the camera this way. Or you can also, just by simply clicking on the presets, if you're using Corona, I think 6 and above, they have some presets in there, and you can choose from the list whichever one works best for you based on the type of mood you want to create for your clients. But just bear in mind that there is no right one per scene. You just have to pick one and just play with the values. So for me, what I like to use Punchy Filmic mostly for my interiors. And what I do here is that I can now come in here and adjust some things like the exposure, bring it down a bit. And I am going to play with the white balance. This looks a bit too yellowish, so I'm just going to bring this a bit down. And by toning it down, so from 6,500 So just about 5,700, we can see we've gotten a bit more colder colors, and we're getting these warm colors because of the lights we have around. Okay, and one last thing that we can do here is that we can play with our bloom and glare. So by clicking this, it's automatically going to load this field for the lights. So we can just play with the values here. We can go to like from 1 to maybe 0.5, and then the glare we can make it, let's say 0.2. So just watch what happens to the camera and the lights. They're all gonna adjust automatically, yes, just like you've seen. So now they don't really have that glare sight right on them. So I also have my own presets that I've loaded, that I've saved. And as you can see, this is very overexposed. So I'm just going to bring this down. And as you can see, this has changed the entire mood of the space. But this works also. This works also. All I have to just have to now increase the warmness. Something like this. And I'm just going to enable bloom and glare. Yes, this looks fine. So I think the only thing left to do continuously is to fill up the scene with a bit more assets, add some portrait pictures here, add a TV here since it's an MD's office, and then we can add some curtains to this section and add some more curtains to this section, or put some blinds. That also works. And add a bit more like stuff to fill up this blank wall, or you can even just like use a different paint color, or put some wall cladding around the walls, and maybe do something with the ceiling. So that comes down to the other steps I mentioned here, which basically is you going back to the modeling in case you want to model a new ceiling for the top, or you want to apply some new materials to the walls to see what works best for you, especially when the clients don't really know what colors to use for their space. And you can just add some more camera angles like here, so we can get more camera views. You can add a bit more assets in, like what I just mentioned. And for the light source, this works fine for me for now. But I could be playing a bit more of the sun's direction, so we're gonna have more angles, you know, in there. Or I can also adjust the lights a bit more bright, a bit more darker, and then just to get different, moods and feels. For the tone mapping, I think it's fine for now. What we've done here is fine. And then for the post processing, this is something we'll have to do when we're done with the entire scene and everything looks fine. So for that section, I'll just show you how I just initiate the render. It's very simple. I'm just going to click on stop for now, and I am going to zoom out this way. And one thing I forgot to mention was that whatever you're viewing here, if you press shift and F, you get to see exactly what the camera is able to see. So controlling these border lines is very simple. What's basically happening here is that these are the save frames for what we see. So by default, the output size is set to HD TV video. I am going to go down to custom, and this is going to open it. And what I'm going to do here is that I can now play with the parameters of the frame. So for now, I know my height is 480, so I can increase the value here, and then we start to get a different image. And by so doing, you can see we are getting more of the floor over here. So if I go down to the interactive, you can see over here that it's changed the entire frame of what the image is supposed to look like. This also comes in handy in some scenarios. It comes in handy in some scenarios, especially when working with like very tight spacing. So we can also bring it, adjust it this way. Let me do it like this. So we can further adjust it, reduce it a bit more, and we can see what's happening here. So we can go with something like this. So now you can see this looks a bit more better. So now we are having a bit more of the table showing. So That is what the save frames usually does. By enabling it, it also can be accessed over here. When you click on this option, where is it? It's somewhere here. Check scene out. Check scene out. Ah, no, it's actually over here. This option, Shift F, show save frames. You choose the camera option section here and just go down save frames. This gets enabled or disabled. But then the shortcuts for it is Shift and F, like you see, and that's what you have over here. One thing you can also now do here is that we can play with our render parameters. So for now, where you go down to scene, the scene tab, you can choose the noising, which is very needed. I choose this option, and then my noise percentage, I like to keep a noise percentage of 4. And then for the common section, what I do is that I like to now click on this box. So now what this is going to do is that once I've selected that box, when I play with the values here, as you can see, the frames are not changing. But then what this is going to do here is that it's going to basically affect the output render. So if, for instance, if I'm going to do, let's say, a 1080p video render shot or a 4K shot, I'll just enter something like 4000, and by default you can see the aspect ratio still remains the same, just 1.8, but you can see that the height has been adjusted, but then the frame of the window still remains the same. Okay, so when I'm done, I'll then come down to adjust my noise level limit, make sure I have the noising enabled, and then I'll just choose a file path to save it. By default, I like to save my things as .tiff, and I make it according to the camera, so this camera 2, so C02. Save to the desktop, and I choose 16-bit color because it's a .tiff format. Then what happens when I hit render, like this, the image is going to start rendering, and we're going to have exactly what we have in the scene being rendered. So under this section, we can still be playing with our tone mapping and stuff, and we can see under the stats area that we have a noise level limit over here, being set to 4%, and this is going to be our total elapsed time and total remaining time. Okay, so we're just gonna have to wait for this to finish, and we can see over here in the top section that we have our image rendering at 4000 by 3500 pixels. So this is going to finish depending on how fast your machine is. In Corona, or 3ds Max for that matter, we work with core count. So the more your cores are, the faster your image or your workflow becomes. So you have more cores in your CPU, like mine right now. I have a total of, go down here, these are all the cores I have. This is a 13900K. I have 24 cores and 32 logical threads. So for all these 24 cores that are working, as you can see, they're all working to render the image. And I have a total RAM of 64 gigs. So this was currently being used in the render. Our hard drives are all like 0 for now, but then the CPU, this is what we're looking at. So this basically means that all these cores are working to make the render go very fast. So this could take probably 2 hours or 3 hours to finish, depending on how complex the scene is. Yes. And once this is done, we can then move into Photoshop and now play with our Photoshop skills. So we can now adjust the stuff in there. But alternatively too, you can also play with a bit more stuff whilst it's rendering. We can play with our exposure, give it more brightness, like this, or we can reduce it a bit more, less brightness whilst it's being rendered. But I just prefer to leave my stuff at a very neutral option, So when I go into Photoshop, I can play a bit more with the highlights, the contrast, and all that stuff in there. Alright, so thanks for watching. This has been a very in-depth tutorial. So I would update you guys on how the scene turned out if you follow me on my Behance page or my 4K concerts page on Instagram. So take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.